Hello and welcome to the Monday show on OurGame. Delighted to be joined by Niall Moran, a former Limerick star. Niall, how are you this morning?
Great, Mike. Cows milked and all, ready to go here. I think I missed you last Thursday. An SOS went out at 8:30. Most farmers don't do social media at 8:30 in the morning. 8:30 in the evening now, Mike, we'd be a lot more available. But no, we're good this morning now, Mike. Great day, so thank God.
Good to have you. I'm donning the Limerick jersey. We're sponsored once again by orgaretro.com. Go to orgaretro.com. Use the promo code OurGame to get 15% off. Loads of different jerseys just on the, well, I was going to say on the eve of championship. Some championship has started. The football championship in the Joe McDonagh. The hurling will be kicking off in a couple of weeks. I suppose there's only one place to start now, particularly when I have you down in Parky Queeve yesterday. You'd have to say a dominant performance from Limerick. Maybe a slow first quarter. Once they got motor, once Barry Nash got that goal, it was routine enough, you'd have to say, thereafter, even though they'd be disappointed probably not scoring. I think they didn't score after the 61st minute, but it was comfortable. 11-point win, 220 to 15 points.
Awesome. I suppose for a finish, there was periods of that game where they were awesome. I suppose even the last 10-15 minutes were totally subdued, maybe in tandem with what the National League was, but look, I suppose their ability to maybe weigh up teams, size what's coming at them, stay calm in the first 15 minutes, just see what's coming at them, see what's being thrown at them, and being able to adapt in game. That is huge. And I suppose one of the things there this year, Mike, is that we see that we no longer have the Muir Ferna running onto the pitch, instructing whatever else. But the way it looks like with Limerick there, they have 15 Muir Fernas because they supposed to develop that skill set whereby in game they have that intrinsic knowledge to be able to work something out, be able to see it in the moment. And I don't know, does it come with experience of winning over a number of years, or does it just come with sublime coaching? But either which way, that's probably the scariest thing for the opposition who are coming, because if a team come with plan A and plan A isn't working, they may be stumped, whereas Limerick they have a kind of an artillery of how to work things out. And look, it was still the intensity for a finish wasn't what you would consider a championship. There was elements of it in the first 20 minutes that were really exciting, really good, but I think once Limerick's goal went in, it just tapered. And I suppose the nature of Limerick's goal really probably upset Kilkenny more than anything else.
Just what you say there, even something as simple as it's basic motivation, but after about 8 or 9 minutes, John Kiley just lobbed a few volleys definitely in towards Grode Hegarty and a couple of others who were maybe just off it in the first couple of minutes. I mean, Grode was blocked down a couple of times. Basic things, but it seemed to kind of spur them into action. I think they said they were having some problems with the Kilkenny sharp puck out, and they were maybe struggling with a few things Kilkenny were doing, like really early, I'm talking about. But as you say, the ability to adapt and change mid-game, they really looked like they had all the answers really after 15 minutes.
Yeah, I suppose, look, what's the argument? Like, Limerick probably didn't score for the first 10, they went 3-0 down. The first score from play was probably after 15 or 16 minutes, but from there on in, I suppose they really subdued Kilkenny. Look, I suppose given it as a spectator going down, Mike, right? Number one, I suppose there wasn't a whole pile of talk around the final, and I suppose for people to have to go to Cork when they didn't necessarily have to, it kind of maybe took a little bit from the lead up to it, but there was still a healthy-ish crowd.
Geez, Niall, just on that, it must have been 10-1 Limerick to Kilkenny people there.
It was every bit of it. It was every bit of it there, 17,000. And do you know what I mean? I know a lot of people made a weekend of it, but like, it wasn't the fact of going to Cork. It was the sense of when you didn't need to be going to Cork. Like, I think Limerick or Kilkenny both happily enough with a tossed home or away when Thurles wasn't available. And look, Easter Saturday was available for people. And the other side of it then as well, like Easter Sunday, it's a family day. We don't get too many family days. But look, that's an argument for another day. I definitely think, look, the first 20 minutes, okay, Kilkenny were vicious in the stand. The few that were there, we were surrounded by a few of them. And I suppose it kind of took me back there to last year's under-20 final. Like, Limerick kind of went up to the under-20 final ordinarily. There'd be huge excitement. But on the back of having won the All-Ireland or whatever else, back of having won our All-Ireland successes, Limerick kind of went to that 20s final. A bit kind of just going out for the day to watch a match, whereas Kilkenny people were venomous in the stand. And obviously Kilkenny turned over Limerick in that game. And I was there yesterday. This is more the same. And there was venom. And in fairness, Kilkenny, they pushed up. Okay, they really pushed up. They asked questions in Limerick. They put them under pressure. Probably Limerick let the ball go out a little bit easier than what they would have liked after Kilkenny's puck-outs. But again, I just thought once that goal went in, it was the nature of it. It was soft. It was totally untypical Kilkenny. When I say soft, that's not taken away from Aaron's catch and dummy and John Barry's finish. They were brilliant. But like John, Potter Walsh was out in front. Like, it's totally uncharacteristic. But I suppose some of those mistakes, Mike, right? And again, like, do you know what I mean? you forget sometimes when you got the opportunity to play at elite level, sometimes you're always operating off the red. It's like the death zone above in Everest. Like the oxygen is thin, your mind plays havoc with you. Do you know what I mean? And then like your decision making, your execution, it goes out the window because you're fucked. All right, and I think there was an element of that with Kilkenny. Like those hits started playing havoc, and it doesn't seem that those physical natured starts take a lot out of Limerick. Whereas it looks like teams are gassing at certain periods a lot earlier than what they would against other opposition. And I think that's the reason a lot of these so-called mistakes happen, because it's just look physically they're monsters, and they're still ahead of the curve in terms of how they're conditioned, in terms of the longevity they've been on the road. So look, what I'm trying to say, I thought Kilkenny really threw it at him for 20, 25 minutes. It was really intriguing, but I just think that mistake, and I think they started to gas out a little bit towards the end of the half, and I suppose the Limerick just took off and autopilot after it.
It seems like, even looking back at the Waterford semi-final a couple of years ago, teams can throw everything at Limerick physically, and they just seem to be able to soak it up and kick on. Like, in other teams, as you say, are gassed. And Limerick, like, to me, Limerick didn't leave third gear yesterday, I have to say. And when you put it out on paper, you say, like, no Declan Hannon, no Kyle Hayes, no William O'Donoghue, no score from Keane Lynch, no score from Gerard Hegarty, who were both quiet enough, no score from Peter Casey. They score 220 and win, pulling up by 11 points. Like, is it a bit? Do you ever find yourself like rubbing your eyes in disbelief at what you're actually experiencing at the moment?
You're feeding the hype train anyway, there, Michael.
that was my opening paragraph of my match report in Independent this morning.
Yeah, and I can imagine if they happen to be overturned during the year, this will be a conversation that'll be rehashed. I suppose going in third gear, one thing that struck me there was a couple of times when lads got wicked belts from Limerick. And this thing was Barry Nash there in front of us at one stage. Took an awful belt across the midriff, right? And he was under pressure, and he never went down, right? The only guy possibly who went down during the game was Mike Casey. Mike Casey was taken off later in the game. He was hurt.
That was with a HIA, actually, yeah. They took him off, because he got dizzy later, yeah.
Right, so to say that he was the only guy that went down, and he was obviously the guy who went off. So this idea of third gear, I suppose it's one way of quenching the opposition, isn't it? As in, if you think, gee, it's like when you be doing a run in the pre-season and you'd be absolutely ball bagged, and you'd be, after winning the long run, and there you'd be standing around chirping and breathing out your mouth or whatever, but you're faking it, like. And there's time, I suppose, by doing that, you're it nearly sends more fear up the opposition. They're saying, right, hey, we're throwing everything at them, and these boys are strolling around the place as if there's nothing wrong. But I'm sure deep down inside, they're burning as well. Like, but it was just like, going back to what I was saying about Barry Nash. I remember we would have played. Going back to a different bygone era, playing like when the shoe was on the other foot. All right, we remember playing Kilkenny there in a All Ireland quarter final there in, I think it was 12, and like that was that generation of real top Kilkenny hurlers was starting to filter out. Like, they still obviously pulled a couple of All Irelands in the meantime, but there was one incident in that game where I think it was Wayne Mack absolutely sowed Richie Power. I'd say he could have broken a couple of his ribs or whatever else, and Power was goosed on the ground. And I remember Shefflin, just something, Shefflin came up and pulled him up. Like, Power was for the ambulance, like, and up, you don't go down, you walk off the pitch. And I just think, again, like, I think a lot of everything what Limerick are doing, it's a blueprint of what Kilkenny did. And that was one of the things where you don't show weakness and you keep burying the opposition. And again, if we think back to Kilkenny, you'd always think you're in the game with them up to half time or up to 45 minutes. And then it was like running in quicksand after. You think you were just doing the best, and you look at the scoreboard and you'd be 12 points down, and you'd be there, how did that happen? And I just think that is the eerie sense against the teams against Limerick at the moment, all right? That, I suppose, you feel as if you're running in quicksand there, that you're going all out, and all of a sudden you look at the scoreboard and they're 10, 12 points because they're killing you with they're killing you with 1,000 stabs, like, 1,000 cuts even. So,
and just on that, the psychological thing of Limerick taking a hit and a man standing up, it's almost like it does feed into the whole psychological thing of these lads are fitter, because it's been built up that they are fitter, they're stronger, they're better conditioned than any other team, and you are literally only like maybe a couple of seconds from being down in your hunkers nearly, but you just don't allow it to happen, I suppose, because it feeds into it, and it feeds into the mentality. And a lot of teams are probably fair degree beaten before they go out to play Limerick at the moment, but it does only take one team to take them down for that aura of invincibility to go as well.
Yeah, look, I said I'm going to use the caveat of league. Like Limerick, in fairness, have won 7 games on the trot to win a competition. That is some going to win 7 games without ever looking in. Oh, sorry, I'm on the last Cork first game. Sorry, we've short memories of Limerick. No, but it's not so obviously last Cork. We won 6 out of 7. But so to want to win, obviously to win All Ireland, like without having a hit, you have to win 7 on the trot. So like everybody knows, there's going to be at least 2, if not 3, of those days when things aren't going to fire. And I would also say, just having spoken to a couple of guys who are involved with county hurling, and it's not that you'd be trying to pick the brains. The last thing you want to be doing is asking what's going on. But it just came up in a couple of the games, not against Limerick, against other opposition, where if you were a defender and ordinarily, like if a forward hit a bad wide or something, you'd be kind of pushing in against them. You'd be kind of ribbing them, like. And I just spoke to a couple of guys and were saying, "Hey, we didn't do it, man. We're kind of holding them back. Like we're not giving. There's a time and a place to throw out what you have, and for a lot of the teams that were chasing Limerick, the time and the place wasn't in the last 2 or 3 months. So I do really think that the challenge, and it's not cliche, but I do think that the challenge coming Limerick's way will be a lot more pronounced as we go along. I'm not saying they're going to beat them, but I am saying the gap will definitely narrow in. All right, and so that is the nature of championship, and in the sense that, like John, lads are still trying to get to that level. Like we looked at yesterday, okay. It was 116 to 14 points there. Kilkenny were in the game. Limerick had kind of fallen into a slight lull. And it was crying for TJ Reid to come on. All right.
Hmm.
And like it was crying that if Kilkenny really wanted to battle, it was crying that he had definitely 20 minutes in him, surely, when he was tagged out. Do you know what I mean? To get him up to pace. And Derek Lean didn't go there. You looked at Adrian Mullen, okay? Up to 45 minutes, Adrian Mullen, bar none, was the best Kilkenny hurler on the pitch. His work, even looking at him, he's not the most natural worker, obviously phenomenal finisher, but he worked really hard for a lot of it. And say between 45 and 52, there was a couple of instances. One time there, he kind of had a chance on the right sideline and kind of turned back in, got dispossessed. Another time then he chased down Sean Finn in the corner and kind of let a little kind of pitch and little flick in across him. But Ling pulled him after 52. Are you telling me if that was not Ireland semi-final, quarter-final, even if the numbers on Mullen's GPS or whatever were, do you know what I mean, were kind of negative, do you think he was going to pull him off? He wasn't. So there is that caveat to what went on yesterday, Mike. That's not taken away. Look, Jesus Christ, I'd have given my right hand to win a National League medal, and I'm not, Jesus, I'm the furthest thing from being disingenuous about it, but I just think there is a huge amount of teams that have held back a little bit because maybe in the experience some of them last year, even Waterford being a prime example, even Dublin to a lesser extent, they gassed out wicked early in the championship, and they're not willing to make that same mistake twice.
Yeah, we just fly through a couple of comments. Now, loads of comments coming in here. Fergus Butler just said, great day out in Parky Queeve. Lots to improve on for Limerick too. And there is a lot to improve on. Would you have been in any way slightly disappointed with, 15 second half wides, not scoring from the 61st minute on? There was probably a chance. This could have been a 20-point win realistically if they'd put over, 2/3 of those chances in the second half. Is that in any way worrying, or is it just this is league and there's a fair opportunity for things to work on there over the coming weeks?
I think it's people finding the sound bites to play him down, to be honest. Okay, yeah, there was 15 points, but sure, didn't score for the last 15 minutes. There was 220 to 14 or 15 for an awful lot of it. Look, they had a slow start. They still recovered by half time. We were 113 to 10 points at half time. She went out to whatever they said, 116 to 13, went out 116 to 14. I honestly don't think I don't think there's a lot of John Kiley has to come with something. You have to find something to knock him down with. Yeah, some of their ball use was poor. Garrod at times, a little bit, maybe in some of his shooting, some of the things he did was disappointing. But you couldn't turn around and say that's a worry for Limerick. There is only one worry, Mike, for Limerick. The worry is Nickie Quaid. All right, the worry is if anything happens, Nickie Quaid. A lot of what Limerick do, do you know what I mean? He is the pillar, he's the cornerstone of everything of what Limerick do in terms his ability to get puck outs away at a high level of execution. What you would have found yesterday was Limerick allowed first receiver to have it off Owen Murphy an awful lot, but the key ball here in this new game is the transition into second ball. And what you were finding was Limerick were being returning Kilkenny every time on the second ball. They were allowing off that easy ball, that no-brainer ball was allowed off. Whereas with Nickie, he is executing puckouts of a higher level whereby, do you know what I mean, the second ball is in at times it's probably in a scoring zone. Do you know what I mean? Was in transition zone, and it is the big worry for Limerick, right? What you've seen to Kylie's credit and Connacht's credit in that is that they have found cover in all positions. They found cover in all positions. They were looking for an extra midfielder in Barry Murphy even for the league. Probably didn't go his way yesterday, but yet Cal O'Neill came back into that position. So they have a third midfielder lined up, ready to go. David Reid is lined up. But if anything happens, Nicky, we are in bother. And I know there's two goalies, young sub goalies who are learning their trade, and that takes time. But like that is a pressure zone of a goalie there. Like, and look, you look at the last two games Limerick have lost. Nicky hasn't been in goals.
Yeah, fair point. Even just, he's so comfortable. Like, you just think, yeah, it has to be nearly an exceptional shot to beat him as well, almost. You know what I mean? He always holds his ground on the line, never panics, never falls to the ground or anything like that. Just fly through another few quick comments here. P-Well74, who is a Patrick's Well man, I'm sure. Have KK learned anything in league? Players ended up back in last year's positions, or new players off. Billy Drennan went off early in particular. Didn't really get into a duel with Sean Finn or Mike Casey. Was kind of out around the half forward line, which I thought was peculiar. They didn't feed their full forward line, which I thought was very strange as well. They didn't get any ball to Mossy Keown or Owen Cody or Drennan at times either. One Stop Auto says we have learned that people way overhype Kilkenny, potentially. Joe Butler just says, congrats to Limerick, a great display, fully deserving winners. Limerick's skill, power and interplay just blew Kilkenny apart, and you'd have to say, from being down there, it really looked like that. Kilkenny's first touch let them down badly, and they failed to penetrate a solid Limerick defence. There was times, Niall, yesterday where Kilkenny were forced to nearly play the ball across their own 65, and I don't know how comfortable they look doing it, and even trying to score from range. I'm not sure. I don't think it comes as comfortable to them as it comes to a Declan Hannon or a Kyle Hayes or even a Darrell Donovan or someone like that. Like, if someone is to beat Limerick at some stage this year, do you think it will be doing, a mirror of what Limerick do, or will it be something completely different that they haven't seen before?
Well, I've kind of said it before, though, Mike. And again, if you try to ape them, forget about it, because they're just better at it than you. They have the artillery around it. One thing is, like, and I will say, but the team that had the kind of greatest, I suppose, I don't know, success, is that the word you call it? So the greatest kind of greatest success against Limerick were Tipperary, probably for 50 minutes, right? And they stay true to what they are in terms of kind of crossfield ball, getting it in quick, kind of moving them in at angles. For Kilkenny's DNA is their ability to win primary possession. And in the first maybe 10 minutes, they trusted themselves. And maybe the last couple of balls, I just thought that they tried to overplay the ball, like you said. Like, when they got to that, what was the delivery zone is what you maybe call it, that your own 65, that delivery zone. That's when Kilkenny bang it in. Do you know what I mean? Throw it in there, and like, they didn't do it. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose you know yourself there in your over teams. If you're playing a team that you perceive that are better than you become so wound up in covering off their main men and everything else. Like, lads are running around like rabbits in the headlights, trying to overthink. Well, hold up a second, what had we worked on in order to do this? Whereas when it comes natural and you trust what you're doing and see where it takes it. Do you know what I mean? See where it takes it, because trying to ape them, it isn't going to happen. I suppose, look, for Billy Drennan there yesterday, it was a baptism of fire. If TJ comes back and he starts hitting the freeze, is Billy Drennan, will he be playing? Does he bring enough in open play? I'm not sure. All right, but again, TJ, like we're talking about the American man, Jesus, us TJ going 35, we're expecting to carry, not to carry a team, but carry your forward line. Like, it's a little bit much to expect too. So
there's a lot expected of it. Like, it's almost like TJ's going to come back and it's going to flick a switch, but it's not kind of that simple, especially, as you say, at his stage of the game as well.
No, it's not like, and even there was elements of it there, even when they kind of played Ballygunner, that he was operating up his wits at what was essentially an elite club level. And if you find yourself maybe starting to operate off your wits like that, then at inter-county level, it might just be a step maybe too far. But then again, last year's All-Ireland, he was brilliant. So, as in, do you know what I mean? Far be it for me to write him off. But I suppose, look, if you look at the nature of subs Kenny brought on yesterday, like, I know Kenny has done a little bit or whatever else, but they wouldn't have little match under the previous generation of Kilkenny subs. And then in the converse, like, Limerick probably only, okay, they brought on 5 for a finish, but they had a high quality sub to bring on. Like, I said it here, Mike, right? The 3 of the best club forwards in Limerick aren't on the panel. All right, you have David Dempsey, Adrian Breen, the Piercy, and myself out in the hand. All right, now, do you know what I mean? Between the 3.
I thought I'm glad you actually smirked there after.
No,
what you were going to try and get away with.
but like I look at the club championship and I see those two boys, right? They're not on the panel.
Yeah.
Right? In old money in Limerick, they would have bar none been on a starting team. All right, that is there's guys like that who actually aren't on a panel. Do you know what I mean? And then you're coming down to like the Graham Mull wasn't on the match day panel yesterday. Davy Reedy, they've all to come back into it. So do you know what I mean? It's very hard. People say, "Oh, Kenny are tactically X, Y, and Z." If you don't have them, man, it's very, very hard to train. It's very hard to try and go with it. So that to me was probably one of the most worrying things for Kenny was maybe the nature of what they had to come off the line. They had, and that's not even against a team like Limerick. If they had to play a Wexford or a Galway in the morning, I don't think they just don't have them on the line that are going to really hurt you in that way. Like,
yeah, Richie Hogan, I think, broke a bone in his wrist today against Cork. Like they still really, really need those lads. They actually pulled, I think 5 of their under-20s from the under-20 championship the day before to take part in the league, and it worked against them on both counts because Wexford beat them in the under-20, and I presume they'll all be playing the next day. I presume Billy Drennan, Garrod, Dunn, Timmy Clifford and a few more will all be playing the next day, but it definitely worked against them anyway, and they would have a reasonably strong under-20 squad when they have everyone available to them. Just another interesting comment here from Hurling1234. Was at the match yesterday, Michael. Limerick plays such a blanket defence, analysing it up close. Be interesting to see how they would get on playing like other teams, as in, I don't think any teams play 15 on 15 now, but they do revert a lot of players quite deep now. Like Garrod Hegarty, when Limerick are attacking, yeah, he's on the front foot, maybe around the middle of the park, but when Limerick are defending, he's back at the 21 regularly. Peter Casey was the deepest lying corner forward of all time against Tipperary, I'd say, in the semi-final. Like when they don't have the ball, nearly everybody filters back. They probably keep Flanagan, Gillane up, definitely, at least the two of those. But everyone else filters back. And then when they win the ball, they're able to move it at such a degree of pace. And because they've probably fallen back, there's so much space up there and they can deliver that 70 or 80 yard ball at different stages.
yeah, so look, is there elements of football in it? Has there been, like, you know what I mean? You look at the angles in which Limerick, when they win maybe primary possession, even off the puck out, like they're coming at angles to take the second receiver, whereas a lot of other teams, when they're moving the ball, transitioning the ball, if the ball on the second receiver, they're probably coming straight at it. But like you see football, like why do football, like you look at it when they're shooting, they're coming at angles the whole time to try and create space. And Limerick are very good at doing that when they're moving through that blanket defence, is what you said there, right? That's where, I suppose that's where their movement and their ability to cut across. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like there is, look, you could have 12 behind the ball at times if the ball was slowed down on the attacking 50 for the opposition. Like, but one thing you mentioned there was about Aaron, right? Aaron is huge for that group. And I know people, he just allows a different kind of ball going. Do you know what I mean? He allows that dirty ball going. Like Flanagan has huge pace. The ball goes to the flanks. Flanagan has that ability to turn, take you on, maybe come back around. But Aaron has that kind of route one element of it. And like, look at the goal yesterday came in, like a crossfield ball. Had we anybody else really that would probably always win that crossfield ball?
Yeah.
So like, it's just, look, it's the nature. Somebody said it'd be interesting to see how they go 15 on 15. They'd win 15 on 15. That's the difference, all right? As in, like, this is a generational group. But like, look at, I see him at club level here, Mike. Okay, I see, it's not trying to blow around Tom Morrissey. The man is a one-man band here for us. He's keeping us maybe 2 levels above what we may be otherwise. Like, and it's just, he can play this game whatever way you give it to him. And I actually think a lot of those Limerick forwards, the dirtier it will be, the better actually a lot of them will be. It's only just that through the wisdom of their management, they are the sum of their parts plus 20% extra because of their cohesion. And I think like that's why if the game even did go a little bit different, Limerick still would have that aerial ability to go with teams like.
Yeah, and even like, geez, if you put down a 50-50 ball on top of Burns as well, I thought Burns looked back to is getting back to his best yesterday. We have a comment in here just about Aaron Gillane. It just says, so just a different comment. He said he's basically rubbishing your Nickie Quaid theory and saying that if he went in goals one stop auto that they'd still win. Now I doubt it somehow, but someone just said about Aaron Gillane. Yeah, Aaron Gillane doesn't score ordinary league final goals. Obviously, referring back to that brilliant goal against Waterford in that league final, the flick goal in 2019. That was a beautiful goal yesterday, and he looks like a fella. He's obviously was away for whatever reasons. He's coming back now. He's literally getting better with every game and looks prime for championship now. That was his best performance, I'd say, yesterday by a mile since coming back. Looked dangerous at times, and as you say, when the ball goes in, even if it might not look like a dangerous ball, but he always looks dangerous. And even Pádraig Walsh was overcommitting at times because he's so afraid of him catching the ball as well. He really looks like a lad that's really coming back to the boil now and is prime for championship.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose there was elements of Aaron Gillane's goal against Cal Barrett in the Munster final a couple of years ago. He's catching it from behind the whole time. And like, what do you do? Like, if you stand behind him, he's so big, he's going to win in front of you. If you go in front of him, he's sweeping it from behind. So look, again, John like that, he let him suffer it out there the last couple of games when it wasn't going his way. And that's the interesting thing yesterday. Like, the probably guy that you just said was first maybe to be taken off for Limerick was probably Gearóid Hegarty. It wasn't going his way. It was just the frustration was creeping in. And as the game went on, Kylie took off for everyone else. And like, would it have been the easy option for Kylie and Gearóid to say, hey, John, 50 minutes in, out you come, and Gearóid come back in 2 weeks' time and blow teams away, which he ordinarily does. But Kylie does an innate steal there, isn't there? I just think, Mike, that there's a steal there that we don't see. All right, John is so articulate in the way, but there's just a steal in how he deals with those issues. All right, he's smart. Like, he knows when to hold them, knows when to fold them. Even in field, in game, he's like Barry Murphy was probably taken off yesterday in a game whereby you said, look, he needs that bit of game time. That was John Kylie's way of saying, you may not be shaping up the way we want you to do it. Whereas he left on Gearóid because he knows that Gearóid will still be his go-to man. But he was saying, hey, you got to suffer it out here and find a way to get it right. And maybe as the game wore on, there was a danger that Gearóid might have flicked out because of just frustration or whatever. But he didn't. And I suppose that would be a positive in itself for Limerick. So, look, I suppose, Mike, going forward, I suppose, look, the league is over. You're 2 weeks out against Waterford. There will be a day when we'll be under pressure. There'll be 2 days when we'll be under pressure and things will go against you. And a referee decision will go against you. And who knows, like the apocalypse there, Nickie Quaid might make a mistake one day and we might leave in a soft goal. But for now, I just think they're so strong at the moment. And look, if I was in the opposing dressing room, I'd love to be hearing everyone feeding this frenzy. I just think for a team to beat them, they'll be ran close. Trust me, there'll be a lot of close shaves and it'll be an interesting championship. But I think for a team to beat them, no. But one thing, Mike, and again, maybe I'm having it, I just see the legacy growing before our eyes. I've seen a lot of sports people would have read James Kerr's book, Legacy, and I suppose a lot of those 15 cultural elements would have been integrated in dressing rooms across various sports over a lot of years. But one thing that this spoke about for the Maoris was kind of be the tree you'll never see. And I suppose what I mean by that then is like by creating that culture and that ability to always win against the grain and carry yourself the way you do, that there's a generation of Limerick players coming up there now that have never known anything else. Like I went down to the game there with Ollie's brother and his young lad nephew, and he's inside after going into this academy system there now, and we're trying to tell him about the shite that went on when we were there. And because what happened to shite there a lot of the time, or you know what I mean? But like there was things that happened. Like, and at the time we were cringing, and now when you look back at the standards that were there, and you're just there, oh merciful God, and he's there, you're telling lies there, like, as in this doesn't happen. He's inside in a setup where they're telling him what to eat before he goes to bed the night of training, and this kind of crack, like, and that is the one thing. Like, the longer this goes on, the more that Limerick will now move into what will be known as the top 4. Like, we always think of traditionalists, we think of the top 3 of Cork Tip, Kilkenny. All right, there was a time up to the late 30s that Limerick would have been considered one of the real strong elite hurling counties, and then for 80 years it kind of went awry for the greater part. And I just think that is the one thing I've seen before our eyes. There is just everything is building for the next generation, and I'd be interested to know the first manager, the first team to win a county post the John Kiley era, and that'll be the greatest legacy that they leave, in the sense that All-Ireland that they might win in 10 years' time, when this management, quite possible, looking at Brian Cody, it's quite possible Kiley be here in 15 years' time, but as in, that'll really be the thing. And like, one of the other elements of yesterday, right, Cal O'Neill was brilliant. He may not have been on this, I don't even think Cal scored yesterday.
He got 1 point, Jay. He got 1 before half-time, yeah.
I actually thought Cal was brilliant yesterday. And ordinarily he scored 4 or 5 points and he had a great game. I just thought he was really, really good. I thought Colin Coughlin has really grown. And one thing that always pissed me off, it did, okay, was we were going up, and I'm just taking isolation of what we were, because I can't speak for other counties like yourself and Offaly or whoever, but you were as good as Kilkenny boys always at 18. You were playing against them at colleges level. You played against them at Fitz level. You knew you were as good as X, Y, and Z. You knew it, like that. You weren't. And all of a sudden, between the ages of 20 and 24, they went to a different planet. And we plateaued and in most cases regressed. Whereas this is what I see with Limerick the whole time. They're getting better and better and better and better. And even the great guys are getting better. And that is probably the scariest thing, that this is the legacy that is being left behind.
Is that all in the planning, really, even academy planning of getting lads through, but also feeding into the fact that they're going to stay developing, and you're not going to plateau? Is that kind of what you mean, maybe?
Look, I can't speak for the academy because I've never been directly involved, unfortunately. But I suppose, look, anecdotally, I suppose when you talk to lads the club lads here, lads in school, like, you just see him, you see that development in him between straight in the academy element. Now, if we take that, okay, that's whatever you're talking, 14 to 17 or 18. You can see it in how they wear the school uniforms compared to other lads. As in, you can just see it coming out of them. So that culture, like the way they eat their lunches. If you're talking about the kids now element of it, right? I see the way they eat their lunches, what they eat, how they eat, how they wear their gear for training. I just see that it's in a real professional level. Okay, so what you were saying is, okay, how does that feed in at senior level? I suppose the fact that there's no ego, there's no bullshit. All right, and I suppose ego is the root of all. Do you know what I mean? I suppose when ego comes into a dressing room, I suppose Alex Ferguson was the king of it. When ego came into the dressing room, he got rid of the ego. All right, and there is no ego in them. I suppose there's that growth set mentality the whole time, that they can be better and they're looking for more the whole time. And what I see now, Mike, as well, then, all right, you're coming back to club level, like, and these boys are driving the clubs. Do you know what I mean? They're absolutely, like Kildimo, for instance, they're a top 6 team in Limerick. Kildimo, I'd say maybe 12 years ago, I said it could be possibly junior B. Where is that coming from? Who's the driver on that? Sure, there's only one man doing that, like, you know. That's Kyle. So that is the legacy thing that they're building, and do you know what I mean? That's the most pleasing aspect, I suppose, as for what I've been out going forward, Limerick fan, that's the most pleasing aspect.
Yeah, there's a comment in here just saying, from Patrick Coleman, Sheedy last night made a comment at the end with a bit of a smile about the championship and someone catching Limerick. I think he had Tipperary in mind. Given Tipperary have obviously faded out against Limerick at different stages over the last couple of years, and I don't think they've beaten Limerick. Definitely Kylie's last 5 years anyway. Clare obviously put it up to them several times last year. I think where they are now has probably been coloured by the All-Ireland semi-final last year, and maybe even that Limerick game in the Gaelic grounds this year as well. But like, while we take the league final in isolation yesterday, Limerick are going to get it shoved up to them at several stages during Munster. And I think from, you know, the opposition's point of view, I think probably the key thing, and this sounds a bit mad, but if you're going to beat them, you probably want to beat them in a knockout game where you're not going to have to face them again. But there's plenty of hurdles. It's not like, looking back at Munster last year, there was a lot of tight scrapes. Tip was a tight scrape. There was obviously a draw with Clare, another draw with Clare. Came from behind against Cork. And they are playing as well as they have in the last 4 or 5 years, but they're not going to waltz through Munster like maybe a lot of people think they are. Well, I don't think they are anyway. They're definitely going to have plenty of speed bumps along the way.
Well, I suppose the one thing you see it in the stand yesterday, there's a lot of, some of the Limerick supporters are getting carried away. There's a bit of fist pumping and whatever else, and you're kind of cringing a little bit because they're saying, don't be giving them ammo here, like, all right? I think it's rise levels, all right? And like, you look at the 3 games, most final right through to the All-Ireland, Limerick were under, do you know what I mean? It's okay, they rode out the pressure, but like, didn't take a whole pile for, as I said, one mistake when you were 3 points down to go 6, 7 points down. Now teams can put men behind the ball, and now it might become a little bit easier for them. So you're asking who's best prime maybe to take them on. Tipperary have a very good team coming. I just think they're about 3 players short of getting a group that can go 70 minutes with Limerick. All right, they're still, like, Noel McGrath is still the wizard there pulling the strings. You know what I mean? Even Bonner Maher's come back to incredible form this year when you might have said otherwise. But 75 or 80 minutes of that at that level, like, John, there's only so much you can expect them to do as well. Clare are an interesting one. They're the one team that have found extra on what they had last year. All right, they found more, and even like Shane Amori come back into this further bolstering them. I question what they really gave to the league. I saw them against Galway out in Ennis. Do you know what I mean? I thought Galway swatted them away a lot easier than what they should have. I thought today against Limerick, I just watching them, the defence organising themselves throughout the game. They looked like a team who hadn't put a whole pile of thought into playing Limerick that day. They're an interesting one. Clare an interesting one. But it's, as you said, will teams hold off on the round robin side of it? I don't mean hold off, right? Will teams go at it? We often say it there, Mike, right? As in, you tell a young lad to mark it back. I says, get close to him or get fucking close to him. It's a bit like that. All right, we'll have a go at him or we'll have a fucking go at him, all right? But the thing about it is in championship, when you have that real go at them, it softens you for the game that's coming thereafter. And I think that's probably the price that Clare paid last year, that unbeknownst to them, it just had knocked the real stuff out of them to get to that level. So if there is a team to take him, Mike, hey, it may not even be a Munster final. There might be 2 games to do it, a semi or a final, and I think maybe it's like Cheltenham is for everyone else to ride out the each way bets then after that, like, you know.
Yeah, they actually haven't been beaten in a final under John Kiley as well, which is outstanding really when you look at it. I think that's including Munster League, Munster and the All-Ireland Championship. Just one question I want to throw at you now just before I let you go, and it's been a few people have asked this in a different type of way. Hurlem1234 just says, Niall, if you play well at club level in Limerick, do you get rewarded? For example, Dempsey and Breen, Ronan Lynch I think has played class at club level, same with Andrew Latouche Cosgrave and Marco Dwyer. Obviously Donegal Dálaig's, ascension into the ranks would say that you do get rewarded, but have you seen that, or like 100%. should there be more than Pearse Street players in there?
100%. John Kiley watches club games and rewards them, and in the instance actually Donegal Dálaig, it was amazing. Like Donegal Dálaig, really, he was in the 20s last year. He wouldn't have been standout. I'm not going to be disingenuous. He wouldn't have been a standout player. Okay, and I remember going to the intermediate final, and just happened that John was in beside me, and I wasn't talking shop about Limerick, but I knew by him. And just a couple of things he said about Donegal, and like that particular intermediate final, because Mark Dwyer was a standout player by a mile in that intermediate final, probably throughout that intermediate campaign. By the way, Mark Dwyer was called in and he was injured. So
that's right, yeah. He was injured in the club final, wasn't he?
Yeah. 2 players only coming back. In the case of Dempsey, and like David Dempsey had a bit of an injury last year. Adrian Breen had been in there, so it wasn't that they weren't in there. All right, that they weren't in there, but he had, like I was saying, you knew by Kiley he'd major time for Donegal Dálaig. He saw something in him, and I wouldn't have seen it in him only for what the run that Moline would have went on later on in the year. So he's 100% in tune. And our own club there, we've a guy Kieran Barry that went in. That's the one thing, Mike. That's another scary thing, right? And I reference this guy in our club, Kieran Barry. He's a guy that played 1 year at under 20. For Limerick, and probably today he played. I think he might have marked Shane Barrett, didn't just go his way, but a real ambitious kind of a guy, professional guy. He went out of his way during lockdown. I mean, now went to a level physically and everything else with a view to making this county panel, and had a great year with us for the club. He was called into that panel in old money. Didn't matter what he'd done, because we weren't contesting at the latter stage of the championship. He was never going to be brought in, but Kiley is watching it. And another thing here is, in terms of guys that don't get called in, chances are there might be a flaw in their character. All right.
Yeah.
And his character is the essence of it. And I suppose, again, going back to what I said about the Ferguson thing, no ego in the dressing room. Do you know what I mean? He's in the position now where he can weed him out. But to be fair to him, he probably weeded him out from day one. And weed out is a wrong kind of word. All right. Weed out, because it's not that guys are bad guys. All right. But if there was any element of petulance or a little element of self-obsession or whatever it might be deemed as, if Kiley just didn't read your character, if you just had that little doubt about it, you weren't getting the gallop on it. And even in this nature of some of the things, different things that have happened, and he's defended guys and whatever else, he still sees something in their characters, even though there might be a flaw in them. All right, just because you're flawed, it doesn't mean that you're out the door. All right, everyone is flawed. There's flaws in all of us, and you'll always look for the betterment of it. But if he sees something that he can't iron out, that he knows will upset the dynamic of the group, then you don't become part of that group, irrespective of what you've done at underage in county or colleges or club or whatever. So, again, there is the doors always open for club players. Yeah.
Yeah, and that comes back to Kiley, the Moontor, Kiley, the principal, I'd say as well, because I'm sure down in the Abbey and other places he's been, you try and iron out kinks in different kids, and you do your best, and most of the time it works, and then sometimes it doesn't. Now, before I let you go, top 3 in Munster and the top 3 in Leinster.
Top three in Munster, I would say Clare, Cork, Waterford in that order, right? And in terms of
good man. Never the Clare lads might even get a chance to respond.
I'm going to say I just still think there's a cut in Galway. I think there's a kick in Galway. Right? Today they played Limerick. If they pushed up a little bit more, a bit earlier, I think they possibly would have turned Limerick over in Pearse Stadium. I genuinely believe that. So I do think I'd say Galway or Kilkenny are still going to be there, and the other couple have been cut adrift. Do you know what I mean? Offaly possibly in third place, even though they're in a different competition. You're on the way back. Look strong for me back in Leinster. Just another thing there as well, while we're on about it, I suppose the news broke yesterday in the Sunday game, Mike, about the death of the young lad David Brown there above in Port Leash or whatever, and I was thinking there, it just 15-year-old out in the quad. We're farming here at home, and like that, the nibbies would be driving the quad, they'd be trying to bring in the cows for you or whatever else, and do you know what I mean? It'd sink, wouldn't it? It'd sink you too, that just to see that. So as much as we're looking at it, his brother was involved in Leash, had a fine win yesterday in football, and at the same time, do you know what I mean, earlier that day or whatever else, that poor chap died. And I suppose another note, and I don't know if sound bites in this picked up, but the Dylan Quirk thing, man. If the GA go and do not allow Tip and Limerick to play in the Dylan Quirk Foundation jerseys, all right, I'm sick shite of some particular people in administration, not all, some particular people in administration, and who are so far adrift from what goes on the ground, be it with player welfare that we're seeing across, even I know the Cavan ladies had an issue with player welfare, like in terms of the Camogie, in terms of scheduling an All-Star tour for the week of championship. This issue with Dylan Quirk, the foundation, like, are they for real? Like, we're in an organisation that sometimes struggles for. They call it Grab All Association. And yet, when we try to do this huge thing, like, I mean, Dylan Quirk, even if the young lady actually worked here, did a little bit of work, won't even get into it, and just fucking top guy, the people at Clonotty are devastated after it. If this can allow cardiac screening to take place for young lads and prevent one child being killed, they're fucking wound up in their administrative loophole. I know here in our local club, there 2 or 3 years ago, we carried the logo by our own choice of Castlecannon, Montpellier Cancer Group. If there's anyone listening there, if you would spare a few bobs, throw it towards them. But how much they went around supporting local people here, unbeknownst to everybody who were suffering, family members suffering from cancer, and what that meant to them. Like, we gave them a few bob, a couple of €100, but what the actual exposure meant to them. And do you know what I mean? Then we have a situation where people in power. I cannot fathom how somebody can tell you that carrying a logo of a cancer group will take away from how they raise their own publicity, or somebody would want to be the face behind the GA and come out and say, well, why this is taken. Because to stand behind the umbrella of the umbrella of the GA is the clubs, the kids, the parents, the families, the schools, everything else. And I'm under that umbrella of the GA, no different to you, Mike, and all your listeners. And I'll tell you one thing, they want to get back off their high horse there, and those two teams better be wearing those jerseys and allow the rest of us to try and pump and put a few bob in behind that foundation, because that is what the GA is about, win, lose or draw. And when there's 82,000 people in Croke Park this year's All-Ireland final, let us raise more publicity around it and do what the GA is about and what kind of really characterises who we are.
100%, Jez. You have me goose pimples. I'd love to know what you're like in the dressing room before a match. Well, I have a fair idea from looking at that video with the Art School Reach boys, actually, when you went into the dressing room after.
Yeah.
Niall, thanks a million for that. I totally echo those sentiments. Like, that is what the GA is all about, supporting our own. So hopefully some sort of resolution can come with the Dylan Quirk Foundation and the lads will be able to carry the logos, because it'd be great exposure for the foundation. And as you say, if that foundation will save lives. So thanks a million for your time, Niall. Really appreciate it this morning. And we'll talk to you soon, no doubt.
Do a bit of farm work, Mike.
Good man. Mind yourself, Niall. Thanks a million. Delighted to say